This is a Nice Guys Patreon exclusive.
Welcome to another Ice Guys team season preview video as 32 teams in 32 days rolls along. Ian Cameron and Alex B. Smith with you. And in this video, we're talking about the Nashville Predators, the most disappointing team last year in the NHL, in my opinion. It's not even a debate, really, considering how excited people were going into last season about a lot of the acquisitions that Barry Trotz made going into last season. You bring in Steven Stamkos, you bring in Jonathan Marchessault. Prior to last season, we were expecting this team to be able to light it up at the offensive end of the ice. And that was really one of the main catalysts for the downfall of the Nashville Predators, because only the San Jose Sharks last season on a goals per game basis scored fewer goals than the Nashville Predators. Nashville 2.59 goals per game, 31st in the NHL last year as far as goals scored per game. And you wonder, well, what happened? What happened to this team that was supposed to score goals? Well, their power play was a huge underachiever, didn't really click with the man advantage. And the two guys I mentioned, Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, had massive declines in their offensive production from 2 years ago, when in Stamkos' case was with Tampa Bay, where he had 40 goals, 41 assists, 81 points 2 seasons ago. Last year, just 27 goals, 26 assists, and 53 points with the Nashville Predators. And you could say the same thing about Jonathan Marchessault. The decline we saw from him, where 2 years ago in his final season with the Vegas Golden Knights, he put up 42 goals and 69 points. He saw a dip in both of those numbers last year with Nashville. 42 goals down to just 21 goals with Nashville last season, and from 69 points 2 years ago down to 56 points. So again, neither one had the offensive season that you would have expected. Really what was hurting this team, I think, was a collective lack of cohesion, a collective lack of team speed. I thought they were a plodding team for much of last year, Nashville. Team speed wasn't great, and it impacted them at the defensive end negatively at times. Now, their defensive numbers, Nashville, they weren't quite as bad as the offensive numbers, but still pretty bad. 3.34 goals per game allowed. So it was just a collective struggle and just poor performances, really both ends of the ice from Nashville. And when you look at this lineup, it's very much comprised of a lot of the same older veteran stalwarts, where you wonder and worry a little bit, are they going to get it back? Is Steven Stamkos going to have a bounce back year? He's going to need to have one. Is Jonathan Marchessault going to have a bounce back year? He's going to need to have one. Thank goodness that. And the funny thing for Nashville is they had a terrible season last year, and yet they got 82 games from Philip Forsberg, which is something you just can't guarantee, at this stage of his career. Now that he's a 31-year-old player, and he's played in the league now for over a decade. But they got full health out of Forsberg and a very good 31-goal, 76-point season. Are you going to get that kind of clean bill of health for a full season out of Forsberg again? That's very, very much a question mark. And if you don't, it's even more imperative for Nashville that Stamkos and Marchessault have better offensive years for them this year. You've got Ryan O'Reilly, who, offensively is probably, now at this stage of his career, he is what he is. He's not going to be a guarantee to put up big numbers now, yet he still had a solid, serviceable year, 21 goals, 53 points last year. Michael Bunting was acquired at the deadline from Pittsburgh last year. He'll be in that second line role. They hope Luke Evangelista is someone that's going to be able to pop for them at the offensive end of the ice. I definitely think they expected more from him last year, because 2 years ago, he got to 39 points in 80 games. They thought he'd take a step. He didn't take a step. He did take a step. It was a step backward. 32 points and 10 goals in 68 games. And I think they were banking on a lot more than that from Luke Evangelista. And then in your bottom six, you got Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, Eric Howla, now part of this Predators team. I do like him as a veteran two-way center for this team, give them a little bit more depth now down the middle. Fedor Svechkov flashed at times last year, but they're going to need him to have a more consistent season moving forward. Zachary Leroux, Matthew Wood here as well. And by the way, there was a passing recently, Weissblatt, and I believe his brother plays for is in this Nashville organization. So that was sad news to hear of that just yesterday, hearing that news. But like I said, definitely when you look at Nashville, this battle in the bottom six. There is going to be some spots available, but boy, it looks very thin. And all of a sudden, you look at this Nashville forward group. If the bottom six doesn't have guys that step up and deliver for them, you're going to be banking on Forsberg staying healthy for a year and Stamkos and Marchessault bouncing back. And that's a lot of ifs. That's a lot of ifs for this Nashville Predators team, no question. Now, on the blue line, there's some questions there too. We're talking about Roman Josi, who, we still think is a upper echelon defenseman, no doubt, but he was hampered by injury last year, played only 53 games with 38 points, still has the offensive component, but, there were at times defensively, he's not nearly as that, put together defenseman in his own end that we've seen at times in the past. Brady Shea, Justin Barron, Nick Blankenburg, Nick Hague, Nick Perbix, rounding out this blue line. They've got Osterley in England as the extra defenseman, but Perbix has improved, going back to his Tampa days. I like Nick Hague. Nick Hague's going to give them kind of a, shut down, stay at home defenseman type of mentality, play physical, comes from a winning pedigree, obviously, his years with Vegas. So I do like that addition on the blue line. Like I said, can you get health from Josi for a full season? Is Nick Blankenburg ready to assume a potential top pairing spot on defense this year, considering, he really hasn't had that kind of responsibility previously. And then in between the pipes, there's just as many concerns. There's a reason we called, let's start with UC Saros. UC Saros has been, he's a smaller goalie as far as stature goes, 30 years old. The number of games that he's played has ramped up. And last year his numbers were okay. They weren't great. And if you look at the last 3 years ago, 2 years ago, the goals against average numbers were better. It got worse last year, 2.98 goals against, and his save percentage, which was in the 900s every season from 2016 to 2023-24. Last year it dipped below 900 for the first time with an 895 save percentage. And, if you're going to struggle to score goals, your blue line's kind of not loaded with depth, quality depth. And then you're going to have a goalie with, a save percentage sub 900. Well, that's why you're going to have the season Nashville did last year. There was nothing they could really hang their hat on and say, we did that well. We didn't have a great power play. We didn't score goals well enough. We didn't always defend well enough. We didn't always get good enough goaltending. Well, if you're going to have issues in all of those categories, that's why you're going to have a disaster season. And there's some questions about your team speed as well. So that's an issue. Saros has to be a critical component of any sort of bounce back season for the Nashville Predators. They're simply going to need him to step up and be better, more like he was a few seasons ago. And because the guy behind him I don't trust. There's a reason we called him Useless Oninen when he struggled. And, of course, that is Justus Oninen, who is the backup goalie to UC Saros here in Nashville. Again, he's got a lot to prove. Last year the numbers were just simply not good enough. I don't care backup or not. 3.19 goals against average, 883 save percentage is just subpar. It's not what you want to see from your goaltending as far as statistics are concerned. So here's where I am on Nashville. I don't know if this team roster composition-wise is good enough to be better this year, especially if aging parts up front in O'Reilly. I love Forsberg still. He's got a lot left in the tank. He's still a really good player. But I'm not so sure about Marchessault and Stamkos after what I saw last year. O'Reilly is long in the tooth. You don't have a lot of proven options in the bottom six forward group. The blue line's got some holes in it, and you've got goaltending that was subpar last year that you're going to have to bank on for improvement this year if you're going to take a step. All of that points to me having some doubts about Nashville being leaps and bounds better, especially in a always competitive, difficult Central Division and Western Conference. But part of me also says, they hit rock bottom last year. Everyone that was on the Nashville bandwagon last year going into the season has now jumped off. There's no betting bandwagon for Nashville. Maybe we can buy low on this team if they improve just even somewhat this year and buy low on them, because they kind of feel like that team that there's value this year now on Nashville. Buy low because of how it just fell apart for them last year. That part of me says we should be buying low on them. But the way I view this roster, even though buy low principles are in play potentially with Nashville, I'm not so sure this is going to be a team that is a certainty to be heads and heads and tails above where they were last year with what I've seen out of this roster. Still a lot of holes, and still could be just lagging far too much behind some of the other teams in this conference. Alex, what do you think here for the Nashville?
Yeah, we're pretty much right in lockstep, I think, with the read on this team. This is a Nashville team, like I said, had high hopes last year. It seemed like they were kind of making an all-in move by getting Marchessault and getting Stamkos, and everything just seemed to kind of fall apart. And now here you are left with a lineup, like you said, you got Philip Forsberg for a full 82 games last year. The odds of you getting that again are slim to none, it seems like. Even at 31, he's already had injury issues. A 34-year-old Ryan O'Reilly on the top line. A 34-year-old Jonathan Marchessault. Both these guys who have played tons of heavy minutes with their previous clubs, playing in Stanley Cup finals, playing in long, deep playoff runs. How long can their legs hold up? Steven Stamkos at 35 years of age. We know the long injury history he had in Tampa Bay. Eric Howla at 34 years of age, a guy who stayed relatively healthy at times, but has been known to get banged up. He's a physical player. He's a guy who plays, those gritty third line, fourth line minutes. Can take the body sometimes. He gets banged up too. So when you have the core of your veterans, and then let's not forget Roman Josi, 35 years of age, like you mentioned, the heart and soul certainly of that blue line, if not this entire club. But he's a guy who's had his injury issues as well. And even UC Saros, a goalie who's played a ton of minutes the last 4 years, over 3,500 minutes in each of the last 4 seasons. This is a guy who's getting expected to get another 65 game workload because of, as you mentioned, you can't trust on useless on and his backup. So every core piece of this team that would be needed for them to win and get back into a playoff positioning is an older veteran. And veterans who've had kind of spotty history with injuries. And then when you look at the depth, like I said, the young guys who are coming up still need some time and seasoning. The guys that are in Milwaukee, it's not as strong of a pipeline as it was 4 or 5 years ago. The guys that you had in that pipeline, they're here now. They're starting to grow and develop, or they're already part of this group. So I don't see a lot of progression in this lineup. I know everybody's talking about how, well, okay, the Hawks are still a couple years away. Utah may be on the flux. We don't know what's going to happen with Minnesota, especially if Kaprizov were to get moved. I think Nashville leaps and bounds as the worst team in this division. So I'm going with them under 81.5 points. I'm taking a small sprinkle with them to finish in 8th place in the division at plus 350. You can grab that exact finish over at FanDuel. And then at DraftKings, I'm taking a shot at 40-1 that they have the least points on all the teams in the league. I could see things going haywire. And if they start having the injury bug bite them, something that we've seen happen in the last couple of years at bits and pieces during the season, this could really get out of hand, and I could see everybody else in the Central kind of leapfrogging above them, and we see Nashville toward the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. Like, I was really trying to make a case to say, let's get bullish behind Nashville because it fell apart. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. You're buying low. Everyone's off the bandwagon now after believing in them going into last year and seeing them just have this massively disappointing season. But how do you not look at this roster and say, gosh, this just looks like a paper-thin, inferior roster compared to nearly every team in your division? Now, you can make a case Chicago's got a better roster maybe going into this season than Nashville. And that is certainly and of course, Chicago's the one team that was finished below Nashville in the Central Division last year. And yet, that gap is closed.
You mentioned the foot speed. Chicago's a faster team than Nashville, if nothing else. So when you add that into the equation, that okay, not only are there some teams that are just more talented than you, but a majority of the teams, even some of the bottom feeders, can outskate you. That can end up being a problem, especially when you start looking at a condensed schedule early into the year to then get ready for the everything that's going to happen with the Olympics. And this is a team that has quite a few Olympians that will be playing as well too. We mentioned Josi and Forsberg. Those are guys who are going to be key pieces for their Olympic teams.
And the thing with your under 81.5, and I haven't moved on that yet, but I lean in that direction, is it's almost like the odds makers have set their point total to pad in the fact that there could be some positive regression this year for the Nashville Predators. Remember, they only had 68 points last year. They've got to be 14 points better to clear that 81.5 number. And I'm not there. I'm not going there with that. No question. So there you have it. Nashville Predators. Like I said, my thought process coming into the year is maybe we're going to buy low with this team, but then you see point total 81.5 and you look at the roster and it's like, boy, it's not easy for me to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. And even from a nightly basis, I don't know where their strength really lies, because this is a team that we used to love backing at home.
Of that team. They weren't great 5-on-5 offense. 5-on-5 defense wasn't great either. They were really bad with the power play. Their penalty kill actually was not bad. I think it was 6th or 7th in the league last year.
Yeah, but as far as just situations go, this is a team we used to love backing at home. Their home record wasn't that strong. They don't have that same kind of punch on home ice at Bridgestone that they've had in the last couple of years. And this is a team where you look, they have a lot.
Home last year, 20 and 21 at home last year. Yep.
And then they have a lot of stacked spots in their schedule. So a lot of 4-game, 5-game road trips, 4-game, 5-game homestands. So we're really going to. This is a team, and I think we've kind of had to do this with Nashville for quite a while now, especially because the way that things lay out, especially in the second half of the year, they have to leave for a while when they have the award ceremonies and different things in Nashville. But looking at how their home and road dichotomy goes, that may be the way to kind of attack them from a betting standpoint. Look for certain specific things at home, certain things on the road, and that may be the case. Maybe we see, like you mentioned, being that they're a tougher penalty killing team, they might have an emphasis to play more defensive, have a more defensive approach at home. So where we usually look for overs, we're now looking at unders.
And they were an under team last year, 49 and 33, in fact, to the under last year. I'm not sure how
that's not characteristically Nashville. They play well defensively, but then they get goals and usually go over. If they're not getting that scoring to combine with their defensive play, then it's tough going over, especially if you're seeing even 5.5s to 6s. You still would have to be leaning toward the unders.
And Andrew Burnett's a coach that usually wants to play with some pace and a lot of tempo and get the offense going. And going back to his Florida days, but even we saw him kind of take a more conservative approach and kind of focus on defense first because of the issues they had scoring. Watch for the scoring early in the season, because if the offense improves early, maybe it convinces Andrew Burnett to say, you know what, let's play a little bit more of a trade chances game. But if they start the season struggling to score goals again, then it could be just one of these teams that's going to be looking to play 2-1, 3-1 hockey. So keep an eye on that.
And I often worry too. I wish there would be a statement from Barry Trotz, general manager, where he would say that, I'm committed to having either Brunette be the coach or someone else be the coach. Because all last year, and I joked about this often during the Ice Guys, and I said, one point does he say, you know what, screw this, I'm getting rid of Brunette, and I'm going down there myself, and I'm coaching this team. And he's obviously more than qualified to do that, especially with this franchise. He's basically been the face of this franchise from a coaching standpoint or front office standpoint, the majority of their existence. Yeah. But you wonder if that change is made where he comes downstairs and we know what kind of defensive coach he is, and it's been a while since he's been in the league overall. That's where I really leaned onto that 8th place bet and last in the league bet, because I feel like that could just make things a lot worse. This is not a Trotz built team. I mean, he built it himself as the general manager, but this is not a Trotz built team for him as a coach. So if he were to be the guy to have to replace Brunette at some point, and like I said, I don't know if this is a thing, but if that's the case, I feel like that would be a bigger detriment than boost, because I just don't think that this lineup is built to play his style of hockey should he have to step in as a head coach.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like it could be a roster fit problem, even if it were come to a fruition where Barry Trotz ends up behind the bench, and being able to get the most out of this team like he's gotten out of the Islanders and the Capitals and Nashville teams going back 15, 20 years ago when he was here. That could be more difficult.
Pacioretty ain't walking through that door, so.
No doubt. No, you've got a guy that's played a lot of hockey. He's a smaller goalie. You wonder if the workload catches up to him. As Saros, that's a concern. Can his body hold up? And of course, Onanen, we've seen nothing as far as consistency to trust him.
Wait,
So,
and here's the one thing about Onanen. The one thing we have to say is he finally has a home. He's finally starting a season in the NHL knowing he's a full-time backup. There's no AHL and NHL bounce right now with him. So maybe we see him, maybe watch his first 3 starts and from him.
See if there's a better comfort level, right?
If he's a little bit more comfortable, even in preseason, watch for him getting starts in preseason. Let's see where his comfort level is, and maybe that could be, because that would be huge. If he could be a guy to give Nashville 25 games and give you 20 quality starts out of those 25, then that would be big for them to even see some semblance of having a decent season. If he's just going to be a guy who's going to go in there and he's going to lose, 4 out of every 5 starts he gets, then this could be, like I said, it could be a disaster season down there in Music City.
No doubt. I think the first month is important for Nashville, because of the bad season last year. If you bury yourself with a slow start again this year, like you did last year, it's going to be a long road, probably once again this season for the Predators. There you have it. That's our look on the Nashville Predators. We'll wrap it up in a moment right after we hear from our brand new smoke sponsor of the Ice Guys show, our good friends at Royal Cannabis.
Royal Cannabis, where the kings and queens shop.
Check it out, 20% off, promo code IceGuys, RoyalCannabisShop.com. That's Alex B. Smith. I'm Ian Cameron. This has been your Nashville Predators season preview video as 32 teams and 32 days rolls along, courtesy of the Ice Guys.